everything around me. Green, get the money, dollar bill, yo.
What's up, guys? Got some more Crowfall action for you today. In this video, we're going to be talking about Zerging in PvP MMOs. Is it fixable, and should it even be fixed in the first place? So Crowfall is an open-world sandbox PvP MMO, meaning that there's no instancing, no caps on how big your group can be or how big your little blob can be. You never know how many people are over top that hillside. It could be one person, it could be 50 people. That's kind of part of the magic of Crowfall, is that it's completely open-ended and you really don't know what people are going to be doing. So that is cool, because with a lot of these instance games, it becomes very repetitive because you know what to expect and you start just pattern matching the gameplay, right? But with Crowfall, especially with the world generator and the worlds being random, I mean, you really don't know, and that's part of the magic of it. So I don't think anybody wants to compromise on that. I don't think people want to see instancing or any sort of like hard-locked battlegrounds. Like, I do not want to see sieges become like 50v50 like New World. I do not want to see that kind of thing happen. Because it would just be taking away the magic of Crowfall. But I do think there are some potential solutions to just this crazy amount of blobbing that we've seen in this most recent beta campaign, because it is intense. And I don't think anybody wants to see what you're seeing on screen right now. I mean, that is outrageous. So, let's talk about it. So, it's very difficult to design anti-Zerg systems because typically they're very easily gamed. The Zergs themselves find ways to exploit the system, thus making it even harder for the honest guilds. So this is not an easy thing to do, but I think there are some solutions here. It's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to make Zerging not the most effective combat strategy, so I don't even know if tackling it from that angle is even worthwhile. The sad reality is that big fights in MMOs like this, any MMO, don't take any skill. Very little skill is involved. It's typically about having the right things and having the right number of the right things. Skill, very, very little skill, I should say, goes into this, especially when you factor in lag and frame rates. It's just not a thing. So I don't even know if trying to, combat the Zerg directly via like combat methods is even worth it. So here are my solutions to the inevitable Zerg problem. Number one being more emphasis on per player cards. I know I sound like a broken record here, but I was very disappointed when they went away from per player cards, and they've largely just phased them out almost. They still exist, but not in the same capacity at all. They're to the point to where the guilds that are winning are largely just really ignoring them and not even scoring on them or bothering to, because they're just not worth it. You're better off just having a huge group of people because it makes all the other cards easier. So them going away from the per player scoring, I think, was a big mistake. And I realize that there's some downsides with the per player scoring, meaning that if you have a casual guy in your guild, maybe he'll feel bad because he's not contributing much this time. But you have to pick your poison. Would you rather lose to 9,000 people in a Zerg or lose to the 50 skilled neckbeards? I would personally rather lose to the 50 skilled neckbeards, and that is really the only downside of the per player cards. And the per player cards also sort of incentivize guilds to not just get huge, thus limiting the amount of blobbing that would be happening. Now, there still would be blobbing, obviously, but there'd be less of it because there'd be less incentive to not just be huge. So there'd be more smaller groups around because nobody wants to have a big group, right? I don't know. I was really disappointed they went away from that. Number two being the siege schedule. The siege schedule in its current iteration is very, very problematic. There are a few objectives that go up at once, and your stuff is largely protected by the siege schedule. Holding land in Crowfall right now is incredibly easy because you can just take different holdings at different points in the siege schedule, and it makes it very easy to defend, very easy to attack. So what they need to do, and I'm not against the siege schedule as an idea. Like, I'm not against the idea that your stuff just can't get taken at 3 in the morning. I'm all for that. So, but what they need to do is make it to where when it's siege hour, every single objective comes up, all of them, meaning that this would be a natural limiter. Holding land, there'd be a natural limiter on holding land, meaning that the more stuff you hold, the more stuff you actively have to defend. This would also limit the amount of blobbing going around because a lot of that blob will be defending stuff. Right now, once you defend your keep, or if your keep's not up to be sieged, or if you don't have anything, there's really no incentive to not just get all your dudes and just go slam something. So that's a real problem with the siege schedule. So these first two solutions have been in the game previously. They just went away from them. So let's get on the next thing. Number 3. So let's do alliances first. So a lot of people think alliances are going to be this saving grace. Alliances will save it. You know, if the small guilds can band together, they will take out the big guys. No, I disagree with that completely. It's only going to make the problem worse. I have zero optimism about alliances. I think they're largely going to be a nightmare. The only way they're not going to be a nightmare is if the alliance cap is the same as the guild cap. If you cannot make an alliance bigger than a guild, then I have some hope. I still don't have much hope because it's going to be easier. It's still going to be easier to blob up. And I think the alliance system largely is, I'd almost rather see it not exist at all. But, I mean, we'll see. If they put a hard limit on the amount of people in an alliance, and that limit makes sense, then maybe it'll help some. Maybe it'll be cool, but I really don't have much hope in that. So, next thing they could do would be scarcity and rewards. So, let's say you win a campaign. You get XYZ amount of this thing. Let's say, a campaign reward I really like is the idea of, let's say you win a campaign. You get a glass weapon. It's got, 100 durability, but it's like a really good weapon. So you get some sort of additive that allows you to make a glass weapon that's super powerful. And that's the reward for winning. Let's say the winning guild gets, 30 of those. You get 30 of those as the winning guild, and that's it. No matter, if you win the campaign with 15 guys, each one gets 2. If you win the campaign with 90 guys, well, oh man, it looks like 1 in 3 people are going to be getting a glass weapon. So, limited rewards, meaning that if you win with less people, you get more stuff. I think that would be a very good way, and at least incentivizing. A lot of these solutions are just incentivizing people to just not be huge, which there is no incentive right now. So I think that could work some. Also, it would create some turmoil in these bigger groups because somebody inevitably will be getting screwed out of a reward because, or at least they think they will be getting screwed out of a reward, which is all that really matters. Thus creating turmoil and chaos and making these bigger groups more volatile, more easy to break up, which is good. Number 4, whatever we're at. Increase, I like this solution. This is actually not my own. Increase the group size to 10, but enable friendly fire to anyone outside of your group. Now, we've had this partially in the game before. In previous iterations of Crowfall testing, anybody that wasn't in your group was hostile. So that meant that you could hit your potential allies that weren't in your group, which meant that you had to sort of go about fighting people in a different way and in a more spread out way. So I think this would really nerf Zerging because you could still Zerg, you could still beat people down with numbers, but you'd have to be a lot more careful about it, and it would give the smaller group a chance because the bigger you are, the more inefficient you are in combat, whereas a 10-man group really could potentially take on like a 15-man group with that friendly fire, with friendly fire working like that. Now, I don't think full friendly fire would work in a game like Crowfall. The game was not designed for full, like, one-on-one, each individual player having friendly fire. That would not work. But groups of 10, I think 10 would be the right number for that. Because 5, if it was groups of 5, then it would mean melee would just be not as heavily favored. And with that friendly fire suggestion, maybe range would become too dominant because it is much easier to not friendly fire if you're playing a ranged character versus melee. Because melee is kind of, everybody's all in there, right? So I think that's a decent solution. Again, none of these individual ideas are the antidote to the problem, but I think a combination of any of these would be some incentive not to do it, not to just have huge blobs of people. So group size, another thing they could do, and this is a tiny thing, but let's say if you have 20 players within the same faction within 200 meters of each other, they just show up on the map. Like, you hit M, and you just see a big blob on the map, and that means that there are 20 or however many players in that spot. and that number could be adjusted whether it was siege hour or not. So maybe if it's not siege hour, that number is 10 or something like that. I don't know. I think that would be an interesting mechanic. And then obviously the nuclear option, which we haven't talked about, would be some sort of overwhelming odds system, some sort of system that actually physically lowers the stats of players if there's too many allies next to you. This is the least elegant of all the solutions. It's definitely the least elegant of all the solutions. It's the one I would like to see in the game last. I'd rather see these more organic changes that would just organically make zerging not incentivized and just harder to do. But you know, there are other games that had to do that. Guild Wars 2 did it. I believe Albion Online did it. A lot of MMOs have done these systems in the past. I would hope that we wouldn't have to, you know, do the nuclear option. But hey, that is something they could do. But that's a big thing they'd have to make, a big system they'd have to make. And I hope we don't get to that. I think that honestly, if they do even some of the stuff on this list, that would be enough. Just some of these solutions would probably be enough. But I'm curious if you guys have any ideas, because a lot of people in the forums had some very, very good ideas. And, you know, a game like Crowfall is always going to suffer. You know, any PvP MMO, it's always going to suck when you get rolled by, you know, 50 guys and you have 10, right? That's always going to suck. But that's just a consequence of these sandbox games. But I think largely people don't mind if they occasionally get outnumbered and occasionally get zerged down, because the sandbox experience as a whole is worth it still, and it's fun to have those magical moments that wouldn't really exist if it wasn't a sandbox. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm sure some of you guys have some great suggestions on how to disincentivize blobbing up in the biggest group possible. If you're interested in Crowfall, be sure to sign up with the link down in the description down below. If you sign up with that link, you will get into the beta for free. Eventually, there's a lot of people in the beta right now that are ahead of you, but hey, sign up with that link. If you sign up there, you'll get in eventually, and if you buy in, you can buy in immediately. So if you buy the game with that link, you will immediately get in. So do that, and yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Crowfall is still fun, despite getting zerged every now and then, so don't worry about that. It's still fun, but I'd like to see it change just a little bit.